to join in. So hello everyone. Thank you so much for making it to this highly awaited and hopefully insights loaded webinar on how to build large iconic brands globally from India. So before we jump into the session, a quick word about D2C Global as well as the supporting industry partners for this webinar. So D2C Global is a community effort started by founders, practitioners who have been selling internationally. A lot of brands aspire to go international, but don't know how to do it successfully. So D2C Global's goal is that every emerging brand should know how to crack international markets at the back of their hands. So if you're a brand who has cracked international, you should certainly share your learnings with the brands around you. You can join D2C Global's WhatsApp community and follow D2C Global on LinkedIn. You would see the LinkedIn links in the chat window sometime now. So a quick intro about the supporting partners. Produce is a global distribution accelerator that helps select brands and manufacturers build online and offline distribution globally. Porta and G Express are freight forwarding companies that help customers with cross-border shipping via sea and air. They also help with warehousing and other related logistics services. Stelcore, PNA, Lucria are other partners, help customers with global tax solutions, overseas entity setup, product compliances, intellectual property rights, among other services. And lastly, Ping Pong is a cross-border payment solution to manage multiple virtual accounts in various currencies and withdraw funds to an Indian bank account. It helps in sending payment requests to foreign buyers, paying taxes, as well as receiving digital FIRCs. So now, without wasting any more time and getting into the session that everyone is keenly waiting for, allow me to introduce you today's speaker, Dhvanil Sheth, who is the founder and CEO at Skillmatics. First, introducing about Skillmatics. Skillmatics in just over 6 years has built a global toys and games brand that consumers in the Western world love. They have sold over 3 million products in 25 countries online, as well as through 10,000 retail stores. And these numbers may be outdated, which Dhwanil will clarify in some time. But Skillmatics has raised $27 million, about 200 CR in funding from Sofina and Sequoia. And Sequoia, by the way, was the first initial investors in Google, Apple, Zoom as well. And talking quickly about Dhwanil. Dhwanil has been an entrepreneur building in the consumer goods and retail industry. He was previously a consultant at BCG, working across North America, Japan, Sri Lanka, and before that, he was with Deloitte. He's also a qualified All India rank holding chartered accountant. But importantly, he's been a torchbearer leading the Make in India movement, something that we're really proud of what Skillmatics has done. And we'll see why that is in a bit. And in that, Dhwanil has cracked the most complex business challenge of these, which is building a global consumer brand, products from India, brand that global consumers love. So thanks a lot, Dhwanil, for being here and sharing your learnings with other aspiring brands and entrepreneurs. So now passing on the mic to Dhwanil. Dhwanil, will be great if you can tell us a little bit about Skillmatics, where it is today, and your journey of getting here.
No, of course. Firstly, you can hear me all right, right?
Yes.
Thank you so much, Ben, for that introduction, and thank you for having me here today. Hopefully I can add some value in this session. And so I guess my only request is feel free to ask as many questions. You know, I want this to be productive for the people who are listening in, and not just like like a one-way sort of gyan coming from my end. So look, quick introduction about myself. I think Ben covered my background. Born and brought up in Bombay, grew up here. Started building, post my my studies and stuff. Sorry, can you not hear me? Someone posted on the.
Maybe you can just be a little bit more louder. I can hear you, but it may be possible some speakers may not be giving out enough volume. Maybe you can just speak a little bit more louder.
Sorry, just 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. No, so basically I started building Skillmatics right after my stint at BCG. So for those of you familiar, BCG is a consulting firm. And I used to work a lot with retailers. And during my stint in BCG, I got to work across multiple geographies, right? As Ben sort of alluded. Um, the best stint of mine was when I was working in the US and Canada. And this is, think 2015, 16. And the sort of insight that I got while working there was that it was quite obvious even back then that the ability to sell globally was going to become a big deal, right? And um, it was quite evident that the barriers to actually reaching international consumers no longer were as as impossible to overcome, because two fundamental things to brand building is one, your ability to explain and communicate what your brand stands for and what your products stand for and what they are. 20 years ago, there was there was no social media, there was no internet. So, fundamentally that has now become there's no barrier to that internationally. And then the second part was really distributing your products, right? In a very offline world, as you would all know, that multiple bloody barriers, right? You have, it's multiple sort of intermediaries in the process, a lot of manual, sort of human barriers. That's not the case again online, right? So whether it's your own website, whether it's marketplaces like Amazon, Walmart, distribution has also been solved, right? So um, it was quite evident that there was a large opportunity to create consumer products in India, take advantage of our capabilities here in terms of design and manufacturing, but also be able to not just export it, but actually build a brand and sell it directly to consumers. And in 2016 is sort of when I quit my job at BCG, came back to India, and started Skillmatics. Now, just to give you a sense of why we picked this space and category, um, it was actually it was a couple of insights, right? I think from one, we saw that through my work at BCG, I saw that there were certain categories that were moving, everything was moving online. I think that's obvious, right? But I think there were some categories that were moving online in a manner that it was actually better to buy online than it was to buy offline, or equal. Like, for example, let's say fashion, right? Fashion has moved online in a big way, but the economics of an online fashion business are still very difficult to kind of overcome, right? Very high return rates. The fundamental product experience is one of a trial, and online cannot solve that. And so you'll always have high returns. And so what we saw in sort of products that were like say toys and games as an industry, we saw that actually buying online was a better experience. You had a lot more information around the product. You had validation through reviews. You could share videos. And it's a category where you always want to understand more about what the product is. And online allows you, or like e-commerce allows you to actually explain that much better. And so I think that was one sort of really powerful insight that we saw, that look, this category will move online in a big way. And actually, like, the consumer experience will be in fact better. And even today our return rates and all are extremely low, right? Because you're able to communicate a lot of information and you kind of get what you see. Um, the second thing we saw is that as new parents coming into the market, like I'm a parent myself. There's a lot of focus internationally on products that are sort of non-plastic, especially when it comes to kids. And the toy and game industry was one where 90% of the products are plastic. The second thing, for those of you who are parents, you probably know that excessive screen time is a serious concern for anyone. And so we said that, look, if we can create high quality physical products that engage kids and also enable them to build certain foundational skills, whether that's writing or math or problem solving, or teach them key learning outcomes, that brand and its products would be very, very relevant in today's world, right? And so we took a conscious decision to keep Skillmatics as a physical brand. And today, obviously we started very, very small. We started the company with like literally 20 lakhs of capital. it was just me and two of us at the time when we started. It's obviously had its ups and downs, but we've grown the business quite substantially. Today we are now about 220 people between three offices. We have two offices in the US, one in California, one in Texas. We're setting up our sort of operations in the UK, and then we have a large team here in Bombay. And Yeah, under Skillmatics, we offer a wide range of learning resources, educational games, art and craft activities, sort of all made and manufactured in India, and primarily sold globally. So, we are a sort of, I would say, 90 or 85% of our sales happen internationally. So very much a global brand, not so much like an Indian brand, sort of with some small global exports. We've worked on, we just in terms of just a quick snapshot of our sense, like we've now, this year we should do close to 50 million in revenue. And that's a mix of online and offline. And so, obviously started online and now sort of also selling offline as well. So, happy to sort of talk to anything that can be helpful to the folks on the call today.
Awesome. Thanks, Dhvanil. 50 million out of India, that's a crazy number to build globally. So really great to see that. So a lot of people had shared questions. So what on areas that they'd like to learn about. So Dhvanil and I discussed and decided to do this discuss each area and do it in the form of Q&A. So while Dhvanil is answering these questions or covering these topics, others can just feel free to post more questions that they have on any of these topics. So starting with the first block or area, which is consumer insights. So Dhvanil, would love to hear from your experience. How do you read global consumer insights, whether there is a need for a product or not, or what to improve in a product, and like analyzing between a crowded versus a niche market. So can you talk a little bit about your process of
so a little bit of context on this, right? I think while everyone will always be attracted to a global market, and technically global market means bada market hai, and there's a large opportunity. The reality is that it's extremely competitive, right? And because you're not the only person who's trying to go after this opportunity. I think it's really important that you, for whichever category that you're in, that you start with some very unique insight about either the consumer or the market and why your product or brand is going to solve that. Because, like, I'll give you an example, like for at least taking our case, right? It was very clear to us that, as I mentioned, upfront, like this category is moving online. Now, we saw that there was no sort of educationally first brand. A lot of the traditional toy and game brands were all very play centric, think Barbie or Hot Wheels or any sort of toy brand that you can think of, right? And so we felt if you can create a brand and products which are more education first, there's a differentiation, and that allowed us to then basically go ahead and succeed. So it's very important that you all think through this actually quite carefully before you sort of launch globally, because it's very easy to go and list and ship your products, but it's not like people will just start buying. And even if they
so
do,
how do you read that, Dhvanil? So just that differentiation that you mentioned, how do you what actions you take to read the market and get this information?
So I think on that, you should, there's a lot of tools at your disposal, right? Today, like, for those of you selling on Amazon, there's like a brand analytics, right? There is a lot of information on search behavior. So I think these are some examples of like using data to inform your choices around the brand and the product that you make, right? I've seen that, there could be like niche search terms, which may sound niche, but if you can own that space, it could be a multi-million-dollar business, right? Because you're owning a specific problem that someone is not addressing. So I mean, to be very direct, I think looking at search behavior is a good way to sort of understand what consumers are searching for, what are the sort of the requirements that are there that are not being met today. And the second thing I would talk about is apart from just looking at search behavior, you should also take a sense of like what are emerging trends in your category, right? Now this sounds generic, but like for example, there is a huge shift to sustainability globally. Even though we talk about it in India, realities may India, no one gives a crap, right? People are not willing to pay a premium for sustainable products. That's not the case internationally, right? So, is that a potential play for your category? So, I mean, like that, there will be consumer shifts that are happening. And if you can, understand that, you have a good chance of sort of riding that wave and being a first mover. I find that is a much better way to go and scale as opposed to trying to go after a crowded market and just offering another Me Too product. But then why should the consumer come to you and not buy like the 50 other brands that are there, right?
Right.
I think that, at least that's been our what's helped us.
Hmm.
Yeah. If you
Got it.
are entering a category that is sort of where it's already a demand is there, then you should have some advantage. Like, either your manufacturing is in India is very competitive globally. There's something that you have on the production side that will allow you to have, sort of better value to consumers in terms of costing or quality or something. So, I mean, you should think about differentiation is what I would sort of advocate.
Got it. And Skillmatics is known for creating unique products, which have become like #1 bestseller in such a large marketplace like, let's say, Amazon US. What has been the R&D process for
Yeah.
Skillmatics? Like, how do you create a great consumer product?
Yeah.
Identifying the idea to taking that idea to become a #1 seller. What is that R&D process for you?
Yeah, so look, honestly, when we started, obviously we didn't have a large team, right? We had a few people in product design and development, but I think that has been the key to our success, if you ask me. It's very easy to launch like copycat products or Me Too products, but my sense is that that will never work long term. At least I haven't seen it work in all my experience selling internationally. It's tougher to create something which is differentiated, and which is why, if you do able to do it, you're able to reap much better rewards, right? Because there's nothing like you. In terms of how we approach it at Skillmatics, we do a lot of effort on this, right? We basically have a 100-member product design and development team practically today. Like, it's the largest team in the company. What we do is we ideally start by analyzing consumer behavior. Like, we see like what are needs that are coming up that are not being met. Examples of this could be like, is there search volume for certain types of search trends, but the conversion is very low on those. That's a very good example that people are searching, but conversion is low, means people are not happy with what they're buying, right? So there is an opportunity. Or is there a search behavior of a certain type which is increasing, which basically shows us that, okay, look, people now want, more craft activities. I'm just giving an example. And then how do we, taking those data points, we then basically say that, okay, let's now build a product roadmap that's going to take advantage of these trends. And I think in terms of our R&D process, look, it's very specific to our industry and category. So, not necessarily relevant for everyone, but I think 2-3 things we really focus on. One is differentiation, is what we are bringing different from what is out there. Either in terms of quality or content, or, fundamentally, is there differentiation in the product? If it's just another product, it won't work. The second thing we look at very deeply is quality, and I would say safety, at least in our case, because we're selling to kids. And the third thing is we do really rigorous testing. So, before we launch a product, we, now we have this network of sort of mother groups who are like part of our Skillmatics community all over the world, and we send out prototypes, and we have this process of collecting feedback, which is actually quite helpful. Look, all of this may not be relevant for people just starting out, because, we didn't build this on day one. But what we did have from day one was the first thing that I spoke about, which is being very focused on like looking at what is the gaps in the market. And you have all that information today, right? So you should start there.
Got it. Thanks, Dhvanil. So shifting gears a little bit, coming to marketing and sales, starting with online, and then would love to go to offline. In online, especially brand who has built some basic presence initially, let's say 6 months, 12 months into the journey, the first 2 to 3 years of online selling, how should, in your view, how should brands market, advertise themselves, especially when they're operating with a lean budget? What are the options or processes they should go with? How should they optimize for this marketing cost? What should be that journey for the first 2 to 3 years from the marketing point of view?
Yeah. So look, I'm not a big believer in like burning money on marketing, right? I think that, you should, the way we think about it is that, you should invest a certain amount of money in marketing to test the product and let it have a certain number of like views and, get the initial traction going because it's a new product. My basic, as you launch multiple products, the simplest way to think about this is that, what is the conversion rate on those product ads? And, if something is not meeting a certain conversion benchmark, and you'll have your own internal benchmarks over time, or you can always talk to Amazon account managers and understand conversion benchmarks. It is absolutely essential that if it doesn't meet a conversion benchmark, you sort of dial down the marketing because you're putting good money behind bad. So my basic thing is that always allocate your advertising budget based on some conversion that you're seeing. Never ever let your money after advertising be negative. That should never happen. That is there's a lot of pundits who will give you gyan that, CAC and LTV and all of that is, in my view, at least on marketplaces, that's all garbage. You should be making money, or even breaking even. That's fine. If you're growing and you're launching a new product line and a brand, that's also fine. But on marketplaces, I think, you have to basically keep a very tight check on your marketing spends. Or if you're building D2C, if you're basically selling it on your website, then depending on the category you're in, you can look at sort of what is the lifetime value of the consumer versus what you acquire them for, right? Especially in like high repeat categories, like say beauty or, personal care, some of that can be justified. But yeah, simply put, I would say that allocate marketing budgets based on conversion, not based on your conviction on the product. Like, I think that's how you should think about it. And the second thing I would say is that start with performance marketing. There's a lot of types of marketing that are there, right? You can do brand marketing on channels like YouTube. You can do performance marketing. You can do, influencer marketing. There's a whole bunch of PR. All of this, at least in our journey, we did step by step. Today, we do everything from television ads to like, all kinds of stuff, right? But we didn't get here on day one. Like we started very much focused on just basic performance marketing, grew from there. And then, as you get bigger, you have to add different types of things like, influencer, social media PR. So I would say, like, don't try to do too many things. At least if you're a younger brand, you just focus on getting the core performance marketing right.
Got it. And what is a good ratio to maintain for sales versus ads versus organic? And if you're able to share, what would be the Skillmatics marketing cost budget and how do you
get
that?
No, sure. So I think, well, I guess it depends on category, right? It's very hard to specifically say that this should be the sales to revenue ratio because margin structures are very, very different, right? If you're in a category which is like, you have to view that based on your margin structure and AOV. My basic point is that like you should in the initial phases not lose money on marketing, and continue to invest in a way that you're continuously growing, without that equation ever breaking. Over time, what we have seen as best practice is probably like, again, this is more broad, depends on your category, but I think ad spends of about 15 to 20% of your revenues is what we've seen to be like a good place to settle once you're at a certain degree of scale. But I wouldn't worry about that on day one. I would worry on like getting more traction and building up your product.
Got it. And this 20% should be like, in how much time should one target this? 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, or do you have a point of view on that?
I think it depends, right? Again, you have to view it like if you're, for example, now in your portfolio, if you're one established product and one new product, I think you should view it like that. I don't think there's a generic answer to this. Like, for example, we have a very different marketing to sales ratio in, say, the US by the product category. So if it's a established product category, the marketing spends are much lower. If it's a new product that we've just launched, the marketing spends are much higher. Similarly, for example, if you're launching in a new country, let's say Australia, then the marketing spends are higher because you want to break into the market. So I don't think there's a one size fits all. You have to view it in context of like, what is the stage? So simply put, you should be higher in the early days. And once you get to maturity, you should start bringing that down.
Got it. Cool.
Yeah.
Shifting gears a little bit, if you could talk about offline in the sense that how important is it to be present offline? At what stage should brands think about launching offline? And what was Skillmatics' journey of building it offline? What all did you guys try and what worked? If you could just talk about the relevance of offline to what Skillmatics did.
I think eventually offline is inevitable, right? You can't, I don't believe you should just be on one channel. You have to basically be multi-channel. And offline, I feel, is where like, the brand really comes to life, right? Like when people can touch and feel your product in sort of a retail setting. We've been focused on offline from pretty much day one, right? At least in India, at least that's where we started. So in India, we have, general trade, modern trade. You'll find us in all sort of retail outlets as well. In the US or sort of other markets, obviously it's a lot tougher. You can't do it on day one, don't even bother trying. But if you're basically like successful on Amazon, then you have some credibility and proof to then go to offline retailers and basically make a case ki bhai, the opportunity they do, because we have some proof, like, look at your reviews or your rankings, or there's some reason for a buyer at a Walmart or a Target to give you a shot, right? And so that has been our journey, right? We basically always launched online first, proven our success online, and then taken that success to buyers and say that, okay, now can we basically build offline ourselves? And I think that's probably the most easiest journey to sort of the easiest way to do it, as opposed to trying offline first, because there's too many barriers. And on top of that, like how will you even get access to like the retailers? You'll have to get some distributor in the middle, and honestly, best to avoid all of that.
Got it. So, and how much time after launching online should one consider launching offline? That is number one. Number two is, what was Skillmatics' journey of finding that offline or establishing offline? What did you start with? What did you then
So I think we started, I think about 3 years after launch, we moved offline, just to give our journey. Also, to be fair, we got a little delayed because COVID was there for 2 years. So, travel and all was a lot more difficult. One of the things that we did is we worked with a distribution partner in the first time we tried offline, which in hindsight, at least for us, was a mistake. Because, if you're a brand, then, you want to control your distribution, I think. So, but obviously at that point in time, we didn't have as much capital, right? We had raised some money, but not enough to set up our US team. So we basically worked with a distribution partner, and it was good. We made money and all out of it, but then long term, it's not sustainable. You want to basically own that channel. And so eventually we took the call to basically build our own sales teams in these markets, and that's worked out much, much better. You get much more margin, much more control. It's the right approach. I mean, but obviously you have to be having that capital to make that investment in sort of the team. So I would say this is like something that you can do once your online business is already churning out either some cash, or you've been able to prove some success. So that's how we did it.
Got it. Cool. And just a couple of other questions on marketing sales. How important is it to identify the right pricing, selling price for the product, and what should be the focus? Should it be uniqueness of the product, or should it be a price competitiveness? How do
uniqueness of the product? I mean, that's the answer. Just offering people, like, you have to understand, like, people are not let me give you one really powerful insight, is that we think like Indians, and Indians are extremely price sensitive as a community. Like, we are amongst the most price sensitive consumers in the world. The degree of price sensitivity that is there in international markets is not even, it's far lower. So there they care a lot more about the quality, what are we getting? It's and especially the channels that you're going to sell on. If you're going to sell on Amazon or D2C, you're not even targeting that extremely price conscious shopper, right? If you're selling on, say, a Walmart store or a Costco store, then yes, sure, price is very, very critical. But assuming most of you all will be selling like through online platforms, I think trying to compete with lower price will probably not work. Got it.
Understood. Another question is that should sales is online or offline, should it be done directly from day one? Should you work with vendors and distributors? You mentioned you offline you had worked with distributors. Talking both about both the channels, online and offline, what is your recommendation? Should
Online,
people
you should do it my view is that, like, look, if you are able to basically do it yourself, you should do it yourself. Whether it's online, offline, anything. Uh, the more control you have over the business always is better, is my simple view. And that holds true for everything. Whether that's your distribution partners, whether it's your ad agency. Look, like any company, initially you'll always work with it in your journey of starting, you'll always initially have outsourced partners. Even we had a performance marketing agency and this, that. Today, practically everything is in-house, right? And I think that should be the approach one takes.
Got it. And with respect to brand building, brand recognition, what are the things that what are the things that has worked for Skillmatics from the point of view of building the brand with a limited budget? What all has worked for you?
I think the first thing is just honestly, again, the easiest thing to do is if you get a good product now, the brand building takes care of itself, because like people will talk about your product and they'll start searching for it. And for us, that has basically been I mean, for those of you on the call, like I don't know if you would have ever seen Skillmatics ads in your life. We generally don't do much marketing on a brand sense, and even in India, which is 15% of our business, because we typically rely on product-led marketing, where people try the product, they like it, then they tell somebody else about it, rather than getting like a celebrity or doing some like high-level brand campaign. We've not approached that. I think obviously as we've now grown, we are doing unique things. So we're doing a lot more, there's a lot more PR coverage around us. We're on morning talk shows in the US. We're doing a very large partnership with one of the largest restaurant chains in America to get our product sampled. But look, all of this is not relevant or important till you're in like tens of millions of revenue, right? I think it's a waste of your time to be thinking about this in your early days, is my view.
Got it. Another question that has come in chat here is from Deepak is, how did you start your global journey with your own website or marketplace like Amazon? And today, what is the split between sales versus your website versus marketplaces?
So we started with marketplace, but eventually started building out our own website as well. I mean, not sharing the exact split, but to be marketplace is obviously more. And that will and I would say that will be the case for any category where search behavior is widely prevalent. What I mean by that is, like, if you're selling something that people are already searching, then you will always do more on marketplace. However, if you are searching something which is not commonly searched, for example, say Ayurvedic products, right? That will 100% be a more D2C business, because or like say Indian saris or something which is like authentically Indian. You will find that people who have exported Indian brands, whether it's like Ayurveda or like Indian apparel, like wedding apparel, like there are players who've done this. All of their sales are on their website,
Right.
because there's no search happening for this on like Amazon. So how would you even like show up, right? I mean, it's and you can't target like an Indian and stuff, right? So you have to view it by your category.
We had seen this interesting stat that Manyavar kurtas Google search volumes are higher than kurta search volume on Amazon itself. So yeah, I get what you're saying. And today, what is the split, if you are able to share, between online and offline for you?
Sure, it's that I can share. It's 70-30 today. Online being 70.
Online being 70. And like 2 years from now, where do you see 2 or 3 years from now, where do you see the split?
I think let's see. Don't know.
Okay. Got it. Cool. Moving to the next topic, which is supply chain. So, what all in the early days, first 2-3 years of the brand, what are the cost-effective ways of delivering products to Amazon US warehouse from here?
I mean, honestly, like that's quite simple now, right? I think you have a couple of players who are on this sort of the partners of this of this B2C global group that you have made. But there are, I mean, maybe 10 or 20 different logistics companies now that can, help you with getting your goods from India to an Amazon warehouse in the US or anywhere in the world. I would just, there is Amazon, for example, has a sort of a seller SPN or some seller network or whatever. There's a service provider network. Sorry, that's what it's called. Um, just you that's not difficult to solve, right? You literally give the goods to them, they'll get it delivered into your into the Amazon warehouse directly. You can start with part container or whatever, certain CBM, and then
Got it.
eventually as you grow, move to like half container and full container and so on.
How do you manage the supply chain today? What does the supply chain look like for Skillmatics today?
It's pretty straightforward, right? We basically manufacture everything in India. Everything is sourced, manufactured, assembled in India. We control all aspects of the production. So we don't actually manufacture ourselves in terms of our own factory, but all the design development is by us. The raw material is procured by us and sent to the factory. So we control the specifications, everything, full control on the product. And then once the goods come in, then we basically ship them all over the world, right? To like various warehousing, 3P warehousing. So we don't ship directly into Amazon at our scale now. Initially, we used to, but as you get larger, it's important to have your own warehousing because multiple reasons, right? You want to buffer up inventory and um, also like you have multiple channels. It's not just online, you have offline. So so now we have a network of warehouses all over the world, and these are third-party warehouses again, just to be transparent, not like our own warehouses. And sort of we ship there, and from there we ship to any consumer. So whether it's online or offline or anything else.
Got it. Can you talk a little bit about how you manage the inventory as well, to balance between this not overstocking and having too much of an SKU, and also on the other extreme, not running out of stock and disturbing the flywheel. And also, especially in your case, there's more seasonality to your product. How do you balance inventory management today? What is the process
I think I think you have to take a little bit of a bet, given the look, see, there are two ways to think about it. If you're starting early, I would send small quantities via air shipment, even though it's way more expensive, because it'll give you enough data to know that what is the right way to how much quantity should I actually send by sea, right? And so you don't have to send a lot, right? You can send 36 units of a product, for example, right? Understand which of these 5 products is going to basically sell, and then based on that test, send a larger sea consignment. That is what we do even today. Frankly, we always do little test air shipments because you can get a good sense, and then because you don't want to be in a position where you moved a lot of material into America and then you're stuck with mal in either in a 3P warehouse or an Amazon, and then you have long-term storage costs. I also think that look, if you're patient, there's no harm in sending a little bit, learning the sell through, and then yes, you may go out of stock. That's fine, but at least then you're smarter. Just be careful. Don't send in way too much stock because that can backfire in a big way.
Got it. Understood.
And if speed is important to you, like you don't want to wait because then just do air shipments now.
Got it. Makes sense. Last thing on supply chain is, how do you manage returns today? Like, what is the returns percentage for you? And how do you manage the items that are returned? Do you dispose them? Do you do something else with them?
Yeah. So look, fortunately for us, our return rate is very, very, very low, right? It's like sub 3%. I think it's so it's not really a problem for us in our category. I think
So was it always 3% for you from like last 3-4 years?
Yeah, it's been like 2 to 3% from day one till now.
Got it. And the items that get returned, how do you manage customers? Anything specific?
So I think most of it are not like, in some cases there are like the goods get returned back to Amazon. In most cases, like they get sold back. I mean, it's not like there's nothing to manage, isn't they're not defective. So there's no problem. It just gets resold if it's not been unopened. If it's been unopened or unused, then unfortunately you lose that cost. I think you get some marginal reimbursement. I forget the exact amount. But yeah, there's not much you can do actually, honestly. If it's damaged or something, then it's kind of like a stock write-off. There are ways around it. As you get larger, there are like these liquidation companies, right? So you can take a bunch of your inventory and just sell it out to the liquidation company and recover your entire cost. So you don't lose money particularly.
Got it. Got it. Just coming to another point, which is comparing markets. How do you compare these different countries and markets? How do you estimate the potential in these different markets and decide prioritization? At what stage should you move from, let's say, US, the biggest market, to the next set of markets?
So I don't think it's necessarily that you have to start in the US, right? I mean, obviously it's the biggest market for most categories, but not always the case. You should identify like what is the most relevant market for your category. Like in some cases, maybe Middle East is the biggest market, right? You have to just understand what your product is. That being said, I think our approach has always been get to critical scale in the market that you're in before moving to the next market. Because it's very tempting to say that I'm in selling in 20 countries, I'm in all these markets, but it is of little value because frankly, if you're doing like little bit every market, you don't really have a brand. You're just basically selling random stuff across the board, and you're just creating complexity because you're not at scale anywhere. You're not, you should, the way I would think about it is get to scale in a market where you can start sending full container and the business is growing, and until you started to see there's no more growth opportunity in this market, then yes, add the next market. So just to give you our perspective, we started in 2018, I think, in the US, and we only launched our next set of markets in 2021. So 3 years we stuck to one market, even though we could have easily gone and opened up other markets. But yeah, that's been our approach.
And what are the differences in marketing, supply chain, margins that you make, market to market, anything?
You'll have to look at it by category, right? I mean, it's very hard to basically say generically, but by and large, it's quite similar across most developed markets, right? I think when you get to, it's pretty much this, it's very similar. It's not very different, frankly. I think where the complexity comes in is in compliance and safety and laws and because there's also compliance cost. It depends on again which category you're in, but at least in our category, there's safety testing requirements by market, and so on.
Got it. Coming to the next topic around team, what are the functions, sub-functions one should think about creating early on, especially in the first 2-3 years? What for Skillmatics, what were the roles? Where did you hire from? Can you talk a little bit about team structure?
Yeah, I think you need to have your key roles. Like I think the see 2-3 major buckets is like product, whatever your product design development that should try and get in-house as soon as possible. Not necessarily the manufacturing, but the design and development part of it. The second I would say is like operations. You want to basically have a strong operations person so that you can manage the complexity of global logistics. Initially, obviously, as a founder, you do everything yourself, so you have to learn how to do these things and then hand it over. The third thing I would basically say is a strong marketing function, specifically performance marketing. You would want to basically, I would recommend starting with an agency maybe, but then eventually bringing that in-house. Also marketing on your from our listings and all of those other stuff that you require for online. And then lastly, I would say invest early in a strong finance function. It's people always tend to kind of do it last, but I would say get a good finance controller. That's really, really important, especially as you're dealing with multiple currencies. Also, when you're selling globally, there are all sorts of implications from equalization, GST. There's a whole bunch of other factors that come into play. Forex, RBI, all of that comes into play. So, get a good finance controller.
Got it. And for each of these, especially the last 3 areas around operations, marketing, or at least operations and marketing, what kind of talent would you, where do you look for this talent? What kind of experience would you look for?
See, marketing, performance marketers, there is it's insane, right? There's so many D2C brands now, so many agencies. There is no shortage of performance marketers, right? You just need to ensure you get the right person because there is an inflated market from a sort of salary perspective. So you need to think about that. And that's why maybe working with an agency initially is a good way to think about it. Operations talent, again, is very, very easy to get. They don't necessarily need to have experience in the operations that you will have. They should just have experience in operations. Preferably someone's worked in exports or an export-oriented company. That will be helpful because they'll know how to deal with customs and clearances and stuff. But even then, not really needed. Operations talent also widely available in India across like manufacturing, operations companies. The third one is again finance. Now, again, like that's a little, you're not going to find someone who's got the exact experience that you want. That doesn't exist because this business model itself is new, right? So there is no like a repository of talent. That being said, any decent finance controller who's a chartered accountant should be fine. If you can't afford that upfront, maybe get a good person and then maybe get a good sort of agency to advise you, or an accounting firm to advise you. That's how I
Got
would go about it.
Yeah. So the next topic was actually around accounting itself. In your experience, how have you optimized Amazon fees, reconciling Amazon accounts?
Yeah, it's definitely difficult. That's why I said get a finance controller, right? You need to have from day one, you need to have a strong process in place that someone is actually doing this work. That you're not being overcharged on any of the cost or under invoiced on any of your revenue. So getting, that's why I said get a finance team to basically like either you put it in finance or ops, but whatever. The point is someone should be checking all of this right from day one. Invest in setting the right processes because that will allow you to then scale. Because as you get bigger and bigger, the numbers become bigger, but the process becomes the same. So that's really, really important. I mean,
Can you
there's
give
no,
examples of 2, 3 processes that you have today, which are like
yeah,
important?
sure. I would say two, three things, right? One thing you want to basically be check that, um, are there any costs in the transaction report or whatever that is basically not warranted? For example, is Amazon, like say your product, you're selling a product where the fulfillment fee should be charged $1. Is it charged $1 or is it basically like $8? Because Amazon could make a mistake sometimes, right? So you need to have a check on every cost that am I being charged? What is the correct cost as per this? And if not, then you just raise a case and honestly, you'll get reimbursed. There's no issue. But there could be this mistake. But if you don't check it, you'll never know, right? So the biggest cost heads in Amazon are what? Marketing, commission, fulfillment. So you just need to make sure you have a sort of SOP in place to check that these are as per actuals, and there's no issue there.
Got it. Understood.
The other
And
thing I'll talk about is payments. Checking that the payments has come in correctly. So like what is your revenue? What were the deductible charges? Kitna aana chahiye tha? Kitna aaya? Just to make sure that all of that is correct.
got it. Another related question, one of the participants that shared is, what is the company structuring that Skillmatics follows today for best tax planning and ops management across regions? So does Skillmatics have a holdco and subco across regions? If so, what is that structure today?
Yes, today we have a holding company in India, but we have international subsidiaries. We have one in the US and we're probably going to set up one in the UK. That's also because we have like fully local independent operations now. Like we have a 10-member team in the US across sales, marketing, and you can't hiring people. There are a lot of local compliances there also, right? So yeah, I mean that's kind of how we're structured. So
Got it. Understood. And one another area was around technology. In your experience, where has technology helped in your operations and helped in growth of?
there are hundreds of SaaS tools. Like, I mean, I feel like whether it's like product research you want to use, like, there is Jungle Scout and Helium 10, and there are all these like sort of Amazon's discovery tools. And then one marketing, there are some 5 different types of marketing software. There's Selix and Seller App and um, I some Tika metrics, and there's so many. So like for every part of the Amazon funnel, you'll find that there is a software solution that you can use, whether it's product discovery research, whether it's like, a marketing optimization. And so you should do what you think is relevant to your business. We we have used some of these tools, but we also now have developed some of our own tools internally
Okay.
that we use because they're very tailored to our requirements from a business perspective.
Okay. And what all functions in your business apart from marketing? Do you what are the functions do you use? Sub functions do you use these tools for?
Operations, marketing, product research, and discovery.
Okay.
So these are
Got it. Okay. Cool. And yeah, I think these are largely all the questions. Just lastly on tech itself, any AI tools that you're using for copy or creatives?
yeah, we use ChatGPT, and I think everyone should be using it. But we use it for like listing copy. I mean, frankly, now like we don't need to hire more content writers, right? We get We get the bare copy from Chat GPT and then we edit it. Obviously, you refine it to suit your product, but yeah, we are using Chat GPT extensively.
Got it. Got it. One more question. I think with this we can end. Last question. One of the participants had asked is, what is your outlook of US business versus India business? Where do you see, or global business and India business? How do you see these evolve over the next 2-3 years?
So I think overall it's going to be like, look, I think India is going to benefit from an export boom in both manufacturing and brands, right? The whole world is adopting this China plus one strategy. And so like we see it in all our conversations that they are looking for alternative sources of manufacturing. Now, so whether if you're in the manufacturing part of the ecosystem, you're going to get a lot of export interest for pretty much anything you make in India. Simply because it's not because we're special or anything, is that everyone wants to de-risk from China. So like there is only few alternatives. On a brand perspective, I think that now that this pipe is now like getting more robust, there's going to be more and more and more people attempting to sell into developed markets. And I only think this is going to get stronger and stronger and stronger with more people trying it. How many will succeed in scale really determines like where their focus is. Like, I think if you are a truly Indian brand focused on India, then actually going global does not make sense. People should take that risk. Like, for example, like let's take the the biggest D2C brands in India. They're not global because they're focused on the Indian consumer, right? And so you have to decide what is right for your, because see, you like for us, we decided very early on that we wanted to be a global company. Like our company is called Grasper Global. We decided very early on that America is going to be our core market, which is why we didn't go into other markets, which is why we focused primarily on that market. We built a local team. So I think a lot of people get carried away with the idea of selling in multiple markets, but you need to see if you want to create real value in your brand, then you need to, at some point, you need to narrow down on like what is your core market. And I don't think there is a case to sell globally for anything and everything, right? You have to know like if you're selling, like, is this product transferable to that market also, right? Because it's not a homogeneous customer set, right? Like the customers are very different. And so I think obviously a lot more people will export and sell online. The ones that focus on that internationally as their primary sort of focus will succeed.
Got it. Understood. Makes sense. Actually, we've got two more quick questions. Maybe we can just wrap that also. So one is, like if you could share what is the rough price breakdown from cost to the selling price across the entire value chain, a rough ballpark for people who have not yet launched but would love to understand.
Dude, it completely varies by category. It's very, very difficult to say that, what would be the cost to price breakdown. I can tell you the cost heads. So if you say you're selling on Amazon, there'll be a commission cost that Amazon charges, varies by category. Could be from 5 to 25%. There is a fulfillment fee for last mile delivery if you're using FBA. If you're doing FBM, then whatever your local partner is charging you will be a cost. There will be a product cost that you will have to make your product. There will be a first mile cost to actually take your product from India to America. And then there'll be advertising costs, right? So I say these are like the big buckets of sort of variable costs that are linked to your sales in a sense. It's difficult to say like how will it break down. You'll have to look at it at a category level because it is literally different by category. So it depends which category you're in.
Cool, understood. And just one last question is that FBM, like especially starting out initially, would you advise shipping products from India for each order, or do we need to send stocks into the US at Amazon warehouse and from there ship?
You can start trial from FBM. It's not like you can't. There's nothing wrong with it. At scale, you may have to migrate to either either FBA or a local 3PL. It could still be FBM, but the provider will have to be local because if you're based out of India, you can't do fast delivery, right? So that's the problem. But there's no problem with FBM, especially in categories where people don't expect fast delivery.
Right.
For example, like, say you're selling women's saris for weddings, right? On D2C, like on your website, like there's no reason to keep stock in America. You can send it, by order. I know a lot of people who sell gems or smaller items. they do FBM based out of India, and then they literally send an air shipment, because also there what happens is you want to be, protecting the product, right? In terms of it's A, expensive, and B, you want safety that it doesn't get damaged or lost.
Right.
So yeah, again, depends on your business and your category.
Correct. Got it. Cool. I think we've come to the end of the session. Thank you so much, Dhvanil, for sharing your knowledge and helping the ecosystem. We've all learned a lot, and this will go a long way in helping more brands and entrepreneurs succeed globally. So thank you so much, Dhvanil, for that. So and lastly, for all the brands and entrepreneurs here, over the next few weeks, we also have session with founder at Vadam and California Design Den, and also a session with leadership team at Amazon Global Selling. So you should get invite for these sessions separately on email. But thanks a lot, everyone. Especially thanks a lot, Dhvanil, for taking our time for this.
Thank you. Thank you so much, guys. Hopefully it was helpful.